Good afternoon, everybody. Sunday, March 10th here, and today is a day that I've been waiting for the better part of a year. It's the day that I'm going to transplant my Owari Satsuma that I got from Stan McKenzie in Scranton, South Carolina last year. I'm going to plant that in ground here in Zone 8A, Leland, North Carolina. Owari Satsumas are Zone 8A hardy. There might be a night or two a year that you'll have to protect them, but generally they're pretty strong up to about the high teens once they're established. And I'm going to plant them on the south-facing wall of my home, which should add easily about another 5 degrees of hardiness to them. Generally, it doesn't frost against my house, so this is a great microclimate for it. If you're in Zone 8A or higher and you have a great microclimate, you can probably grow this too. But I've been itching for a while to plant this in ground, and it's finally weather appropriate to do so. And before I explain all the principles of planting this plant, I want to show you a few things on the plant. So you'll notice a few things about this plant. You'll see that it is starting to bud. These are all buds that are forming on the side that will eventually be flowers and eventually fruits. It's looking beautiful. It is coming to life. So what this means is the plant is breaking dormancy. Generally, you want to plant your fruit trees while they are still dormant. But there's a little bit of a weather dance that you have to play. You want to plant the tree while it's still dormant because it'll go through the least amount of transplant shock, but you also don't want to expose it to really harsh cold temperatures. So you want to get it in that zone where it's not freezing, but they haven't completely woken up yet. And the nice thing about these Owari Satsumas, they can take a freeze. I'm concerned about exposing it to temperatures below 28 degrees. I don't care if this were to get a light frost or a light freeze. It'll be just fine, especially up against the southern exposure of my house. But the important thing is to just protect it from hard freezes. And in our 10-day forecast, there are no freezes or freeze warnings anywhere in sight. We're pretty comfortable there. And generally, you have to know the last freeze date in your area. And our last freeze date historically is about March 20th. Today's March 10th. We don't have any freezes in the forecast, so there's a good chance that we will not incur any freezes until next winter in my area. And there's also a good chance that if the forecast is wrong, it won't be a very strong freeze. So this should be pretty safe to plant in ground, and I definitely don't want to wait any longer for it to break dormancy. So those are the principles of timing that you need to understand, and it's very zone specific. So you have to create the same logic in your zone, know your last freeze date, back out of that freeze date using the 10-day forecast, and then apply the same logic. Now I want to discuss the actual planting of the tree. Alright, let's talk shovels. Here you will see two different kinds of shovels. The shovel on the left is a standard digging shovel, and then the shovel on the right is a square shovel. You use the two shovels to create two distinctly different kinds of holes. The shovel on the left, if you use a standard digging shovel, you will almost certainly be digging a round hole. The shovel on the right, that is for digging a square hole. Now, notice this Home Depot bucket right here. What do we know about containered plants? We know that the roots will form a circular pattern around the round containers. It's called root binding. You've heard of a root-bound plant. That's when the root systems start to create a circular pattern, and it basically starts choking itself, and it needs to be up-potted, or it needs to be taken out of the pot and the roots pruned back. That will happen similarly if you dig a round hole in earth. So, main principle of planting any kind of fruit tree, or any kind of tree in general, do not use a regular shovel, because you're going to dig a round hole, and you're going to create a situation where you are going to have the same constricting effect that a container will have in nature. So what we want to do here is we want to dig a square hole using a square shovel. Now, how deep do you want to dig? Well, you want to dig your hole in such a way that where the tree is right now will be about where the soil line is in earth. So basically you want to dig it a little bit deeper than the size of the container, and then you want to fluff up the soil a little bit and then basically backfill it so your tree comes up roughly to the same grade that it is in your container. So I don't want to bury this any deeper. You especially never want to bury the graft. Here you can see where the tree was grafted. This is the trifoliate orange rootstock, and then this is the Owari Satsuma right here. It takes over right here. Never bury the graft. You want it to be about at the same soil line level. But what I'm also going to do is I'm going to put a slight mound where it's mounded about 2 inches higher. I'm going to actually set the tree a little bit higher and curve up the ground. I'll show you how I'll do that once I actually dig the hole. And finally, you want to look at the native soil that your tree is going in. You always want to make sure that you have good drainage. So I'm going to dig down, and if I decide that the native soil is not very good and it's pretty heavy, I may add some sand to that as well. So I may have to dig the hole a little bit deeper. So I'm going to go outside and I'm going to do that and show you where I stand. Alright, here you can see the hole I dug for my Satsuma. The first thing I want to say is God bless the people out there that do this for a living and dig holes so the rest of us have things like electricity and running water, because this is absolutely brutal. This is tough back-breaking work, and this is only digging one tree. But nevertheless, here you can see the measuring tape. This hole is about 30 to 31 inches, and it's pretty square. It is also it's even bigger on this end, actually a little bit closer to 32 inches, and it is 2 feet deep. Now this is way bigger than my Satsuma over here, which is only about a foot deep. So you may be asking yourself, why on earth did I dig a hole this big? Well, it's simple. This right here is a brand new house, and I knew that as a brand new house, the dirt was going to be terrible quality. And as you can see here, it's just foundation fill. It's mostly gravel and sand. It is made to prevent slab foundation sediment. And I am not a structural engineer, but I am an electrical engineer, and I do remember from taking the professional engineering exam that sand is what you want for foundations, because sand does not settle. Its settlement is considered immediate, and after that it does not have significant long-term settlement. So while having sand is great for things like drainage and settlement for your house foundation, it's not the greatest thing for your plants, because it is very firm and it does not contain much organic matter, so it's not where you want to put your roots. So what I did was I imagined a half whiskey barrel where plants, large citrus, spend their lives permanently in containered environments, and I said, well, even if the roots don't find a way, even if nature doesn't find a way, which it always does, to expand its root ball, will it be happy in this home? Yes, I could have a very large tree with a root mass of this size, even if the roots don't branch out much. This would be a pretty nice container. So that's how you have to think when you do this. So what I'm going to do is, sorry for the wind noise, this is a high-end Pennington potting mix mixed with cocoa coir and peat moss. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to take this native soil and I'm going to mix this in with this good stuff in here, and that is going to promote a nice blend of water retention and drainage. So I'm going to backfill this out, so once I set the root ball on here, it's going to be about 2 inches above the soil line. And then I'm going to take compost and mulch and I'm going to place it around that kind of like a hill, because I want the roots to be able to breathe a little bit. I only want them to be up about 1 inch or 2. So I'm going to go ahead and do that. Alright, so I removed the root ball from the container, and that root ball is exactly 10 inches tall. So what I need to do is I need to backfill my hole to where there's about 8 or 9 inches left from the top. That way this root mass will sit ever so slightly elevated. And if you look inside here, you'll see that's just a bag of cow manure compost that I'm going to mix in with some native soil, because my intention is eventually when the roots grow deep enough, I want it to have some nice organic matter in there that continually feeds So I have another half a bag of compost. I'm going to backfill with this mix of peat moss, cocoa coir, and potting soil and the native sand. I'm going to backfill this in lifts and slowly mix in a little bit more of this compost that I got from Lowe's. I'm going to mix this in as I go, just so there's some nice organic matter that's scattered in. Okay, now we very carefully have to pick up our root ball with a hand under the bottom and make sure it doesn't come apart, and gently set it into the hole. And now we want to turn it so all of the foliage kind of comes out this way. Alright, it's tough to tell, but you can see it better from the side, that there's actually not a lot of foliage that sticks out towards the house. But here, this comes out forward, so we want it to grow out. That way we'll have to do minimal pruning to keep the branches away from the house. Okay, the tree is in, it's oriented exactly how I want it to be. If you can see down here, I backfilled the top 4 to 6 inches with straight aged compost to give nice organic matter around the roots. So now what I'm going to do is I'm going to spread around the dirt with a rake. I'm going to stake it. I'm going to water it in very well, and then I'm going to give it just a little feeding after I'm done watering it in with some fish emulsion mixed in with with just plain old water in order to help take the edge off when it comes to transplant shock. And that is the final product. One thing you will notice, I did not mound the brown mulch around the graft. You don't want wet mulch resting against the tree trunk because it could possibly rot the trunk. So I like to put it around. Eventually the roots will grow out this way. They'll come out this way and they'll go out that way. So you want to keep around the base of the tree where there's a graft. You want to keep that pretty You want to keep that dry. You don't want that to be exposed if possible. So there is the final product. I can't wait to see what this tree yields for me. I hope I get some Satsuma mandarins this upcoming fall. So far the whole tree is starting to break out in blossoms, so as long as it doesn't suffer too much transplant shock and it takes off in this location, it should do fairly well. I really hope you all enjoyed watching the video. If you haven't already, please consider subscribing to the channel and follow along. I'll have plenty more videos as we progress into the spring and summer. I hope you all enjoyed this. Thank you for watching, and I hope to see you again next time. Here we are 6 days later after the initial transplant. You can see that the blooms and the green growth are really starting to accelerate. Everything is looking really great. I am really happy with the progress so far. I was afraid it would suffer a little bit of transplant shock, but it's sending out new shoots like crazy. The buds are about getting ready to open up, and I think the plant is really liking its new home in ground. So I'm very happy about this, and I'll be sure to keep you all updated on the status of this tree throughout the summer.